Hey, I'm Jack O'Halloran, CEO of Skale. So we have, I think, 1 hour of deep crypto math proofs. Who's excited for that? Just kidding, just kidding. So thank you for your attention today. I know that we've gone deep. It's been a long day. The first announcement is that happy hour starts after the next session. So we're close, all right? All right, so let me tell you a little bit about Skale. So who here is familiar with Skale? Okay, see some hands. Also see some people that maybe this is a first. So I'm going to give an update and also go into a project update as well and overview. So first off, we just wanted to say we raised some more financing this last summer and want to take a minute to thank Multicoin. So the Multicoin team has been tremendously helpful to the Skale project, helping us with advice, introductions, guidance, et cetera. Been absolutely great. But number one, they believed in us a long time ago when we had, this just a fraction of the traction that is there today. So really want to thank Kyle, Tushar, and the entire team for believing in Skale. So when you raise financing at an early stage startup, the most critical thing is to build a phenomenal team. So I have to say, I am really appreciative of the people here working at Skale, and I wanted to bring this up because we are at a point in the evolution of this industry where the real talent in Silicon Valley and other places are rushing into the space, okay? Before it was a bit of like, a bit of craziness and, people were coming from all over, but real highly trained professionals who know how to start technology companies and build technology companies are coming and joining the startups that have gotten product market fit. And we're very thankful to be where we are, so we and are consciously designing our growth around bringing in great people and a diverse team. So our diverse team is diverse not just in traditional measures, but also geography. So half of the Skale team is in Ukraine. We've got 4 PhDs in Ukraine and a whole team of national champions in computer science and math, physics, informatics, and really, even though it's global, it's a very unified team that unifies around a mission. So let's talk a little bit about the mission. So what are we doing? I'll wait to get into the math proofs. Just kidding. It's easy to talk about tech, but it's harder to talk really about implications. So we believe in where this industry is going, and in the early 2000s, technology growth was about disrupting incumbents with optimization and lower costs and building economies of scale. And Jeff Bezos is obviously very famous for that and for that quote. I've been saying that the new quote and the new time and the new movement is about your margin is our opportunity, and it's really about the democratization of business. So you can read about this in the mega thesis and the Web3 component that Kyle has written. Chris Dixon at A16Z has written a lot of really great stuff around why decentralization matters. And even though token prices have been doing this, from the inside as a builder, the growth is just perfectly on track. It's amazing. And I saw this happen in mobile. I saw this happen in machine learning and advanced analytics, and as I worked in both those industries during their growth phase, and the signs are here. So it's exciting. Our team's excited about it. But the issue is the values you get for using decentralization or decentralized applications are not going to be realized if there's greater friction than value. So there's a friction to value ratio. And what that means is we need to have a better version of a back end. We need a decentralized cloud. We need better infrastructure across the board so that when you use decentralized applications, you don't feel like you're using them. You just get the benefits. So Skale is helping enable this. And what we're building is truly a decentralized cloud that's geared for these types of applications that need trustlessness and blockchain functionality, et cetera. So, but it has to be performant, secure, cost competitive, and decentralized. And those are things that we haven't achieved yet from the industry. Even though we've had a lot of great progress and we see so much action happening, we still are a little bit further away when it comes to these measures. So we are building what we like to call an elastic blockchain network. So you can almost think of it as blockchains on demand or blockchains as a service. But these blockchains aren't static. They are elastic, and they're configurable. Just like a developer would experience when they get access to their own Amazon EC2 instance, right? So I'm going to get into what this looks like at an architectural level. We will get a bit into the tech. But 1,000 nodes on the Scale network can run 8,000 independent blockchains. So you get so much more out of the network when you leverage containerization and microservices within a blockchain ecosystem. It's really combining modern best practices in DevOps and with blockchain and best-in-class cryptography, okay? I've been doing startups for a while. I've also learned the lesson, don't boil the ocean on day one. You have to go to where the low-hanging fruit is, go to where the business is. And there's so much action happening in the Ethereum developer ecosystem. So we are very focused on supporting the Ethereum developer community. In less than 2 lines of code, you can take an Ethereum dApp and move it and connect it into a Scale chain. And I'll show you the performance and have a night and day difference in terms of performance and cost in literally 2 lines of code. And there are already 32 world-class dApps that are signed up in the Scale Innovator Program. We have 100 in the pipeline. And really, it just speaks to, I think, great follow-through and execution from our engineering team, but also a real understanding on the customer side. And there's people that have a problem, and we're bringing a viable solution to them. So why do they use this? Well, one, they get sub-second block times. So instead of having to have the transaction go through and waiting and I hope it really went through, or if you're playing a game and smart contracts are a component of a game or a financial application, you don't want to wait 15 or 20 seconds, right? It needs to be near instantaneous. There's also not throughput limitations. A large Scale chain can do 2,000 transactions per second. It can also run full state smart contracts. You have a smart contract on Ethereum, it can be ported over easily into the Scale chain, and you're not gated or limited in your ability to use escrows and smart contracts and run DeFi applications or games, et cetera. You're also able to do storage and run file storage in a Scale chain. I'll touch on that in a minute. We also just recently released machine learning. So you can even run pre-trained TensorFlow models to do fraud detection or price prediction, et cetera, in the Scale chain, and have the chains message back and forth. So update state between chains or back between a Scale chain to the Ethereum mainnet. So these things are all very intuitive to developers building on the Ethereum stack. It's really completely usable and composable between the two ecosystems, which is really key. Okay, so how does this happen? We'll talk about that. So blockchains, the more nodes that are operating to validate, the more secure the blockchain, right? There's just less probability that half or 2/3 would collude to try to change the state. But it also means there's more bloat, there's more cost, it's more expensive to run that blockchain. And so one way to make blockchains faster is just to have less validators. So if you can see here, there's a smaller set compared to a larger set. But these smaller sets are more prone to collusion, right? There's just less, like if everybody in this room we just needed 2/3 of us to collude and we could steal, $100 million, it'd be easier than getting 2/3 of the city of New York to collude. So the way around this is to use randomness, rotation, and incentives. So what Scale does is there's a large pool of Scale nodes. We're able to randomly select nodes to work in a Scale chain, and then we're able to rotate them intermittently. This way they can't collude, okay? And then they also have an incentive. They put a stake. It's a work token. So they stake into the network. And when you stake into the network, if you act maliciously or you go Byzantine, you lose that money, okay? So what we want is smaller performance sets that get the security pool of the larger group. So this is enabled by the architecture. And really, we're going to get to our grand vision, and it's enabled by the Scale architecture. So every Scale node is able to do services for the network. So there's a component that does, and this, sorry if this text is too small, I'll read it. So there's orchestration that manages where the nodes go and work. There's auditing, where the nodes all monitor each other. There's administration, where the network actually self-administers itself to pay people that work within the network, okay? But then also, there are these virtualized subnodes. So every node is actually able to run 128 separate blockchains, or on 128 chains. So what that means is one server gets utilized so much more. It can be used over 100 times for different applications. But let's say somebody has a lot of throughput or a lot of storage requirements. Well, they can actually buy more of the network. And you can buy a bigger piece or even buy the entire asset and buy all of that server space. And you get more throughput, more storage, et cetera. So this, by the way, is just table stakes. You've got to bring this to the table, this type of functionality, if you're building infrastructure in a Web 2 world, right? It's just using Docker, using Kubernetes. These are things that we're not really enabling people to use in a dynamic way in blockchains, and Scale is trying to do that. Okay, what the implication is, we then create a network that is size, cost, and privacy configurable. So when you set up a Scale chain, you can determine what you want, what your business requirements are. Should the transactions be private? Should they be public? Eventually, you'll be able to swap in and out different types of virtual machine, different types of consensus. And again, it's a high-performance, enterprise-grade product that runs in a decentralized manner that supports decentralized entities. But we don't feel like those things need to be mutually exclusive: configurability, high performance, and decentralization. Okay, Scale storage. So storage, by the way, is a very big category in the decentralization space. And we really believe in a lot of the areas. And for example, Scale's excited about partnering with Arweave and having a permanence component. Scale storage supports storage that's related to smart contract execution. So with Scale storage, you could run a fully decentralized website, game, app, social network, et cetera, all within the Scale chain. You also can run, as I mentioned earlier, machine learning models. So why would you want to do that? Well, you could think of a smart contract as an escrow. And in financial applications, if there's an oracle connected that's sending in a data point to the contract, if there's fraud that's there and you have an algorithm that's trained to detect that, it actually is going to stop the escrow from going through. And there's hundreds and hundreds of use cases where we see this existing in a similar fashion in the centralized world. Okay, the other one is price prediction. And price prediction is also very proven from a use case perspective. The other piece would be image recognition. So let's say we have a social network for dogs, and a cat picture goes up there. It can reject that. There's obviously other use cases that groups who are decentralized that want to monitor their blockchain, want to ensure that there's not nudity or other things that don't belong on that chain. Well, all of a sudden they have a way to self-police their own group. And that's a big issue with blockchains is what is going to go on them if they're governed by a community. So that's why we built that. All right, let's see if this build works. Okay, so Scale also can sync back and forth very quickly with the Ethereum mainnet. So it's very easy to send ETH, ERC20, DAI, and all the other permutations of Ethereum back and forth between Scale and the Ethereum mainnet. We are eventually building out also ability to clone Bitcoin and pull Bitcoin into the Scale network. If Libra ever launches or other similar type tokens or assets, they'll be able to be cloned and brought in. But what happens is when they get cloned and brought into the Scale network, they're not running Nakamoto consensus and running Bitcoin inside the Scale network. They're actually running Scale and the Ethereum ecosystem. So all of a sudden, a developer who's an Ethereum developer is able to access Bitcoin as part of their application and run it entirely within the Ethereum stack and get access to MetaMask and Ganache and Truffle and all the Web3 components. So these are all brought to bear within each Scale chain, and other assets will be able to leverage the ecosystem. So this doesn't happen automatically. We've put a lot of effort into making sure that the Scale network has very good interoperability with the Ethereum stack and Web3 stack. Okay, so is everyone still with me? All right, okay, good. So an announcement. we've been working on this for 2 years now and been doing a lot of coding. We were very quiet for a long time. We're starting to be a lot more public, and that's because we're launching the network. We're launching the mainnet early next year. 1 year ago from roughly today, we launched the first testnet. Those of you familiar with mountains, there's a mountain that's not really a mountain near San Francisco called Mount Tam. Tam was the first release. It's more of a hill. The next one was Fuji, and that's where we are now. And validators all over the world are running the Scale network, and top validators and infrastructure partners like Bison Trails and Staked and Stake with Us and NGC and Hashed and Figment and many of the top brand groups in this space are running nodes all around the world. And they're doing this because we're getting ready to launch this in the wild. So all of the dApps we see building in the Scale dev environment are going to be porting over into the mainnet. And these validators will then start validating and running the new network that goes live. And this one will be called Kilimanjaro. But Kilimanjaro is just one step along the path of our mountaineering efforts. So we will then release Everest later this year. Everest is an even more decentralized, open version of the network. And then after that, where do you go from Everest? Well, you have to go to Mars, okay? So on Mars, there's 2 really large mountains. One's called Elysium. The other one is called Olympus, which just happens to be the tallest mountain in Mars. And what we're really building for is obviously more features that enterprises and large decentralized entities and groups are going to need, such as privacy and AI and other components to make blockchains more usable for this Web3 promise. But real success at the infrastructure level comes when really comes to play when it becomes a platform. So we see Scale as being the architecture that brings the Ethereum ecosystem to life and makes it usable and cost-effective. And I showed the architecture earlier, but we see this and envision this as being similar to a Force.com or Ubuntu or iOS or Android or Twilio, where this becomes a platform that people are building on and around. And our efforts now are very focused on getting, we've got to get the snowball going down the hill, but eventually the open source community gets around these things, and there's real potential for this to become the leading piece of architecture in tandem with Ethereum to help run the next decentralized web. So thank you, everybody. I appreciate your attention. I'm going to take a few questions, and then we have one more really, really amazing session, which I'm excited for, and then drink. So any questions? Okay, Tony. Yeah, great question. So we're seeing, what we did, we studied the Amazon model. How did Amazon go to market? And the reason why is Amazon obviously was successful, but it's a very horizontal play, right? AWS is used by every type of company. But they didn't start with every type of company. They did have some segmentation strategy. We are taking a similar approach. We're targeting 5 to 50-person companies and going after companies and projects and groups and entities that have a high need for throughput of smart contracts, okay? And a need for decentralization and a need for low cost because Scale's gasless and other such reasons. So we're seeing about 35% on gaming now, another roughly 30% or 20 to 30 on DeFi, and then many other disruptors. You would not believe the innovation and the teams coming into the space over the last 6 months. We used to get one lead maybe every 2 or 3 weeks. We probably get 3 or 4 a day now. And people are finding areas where they can build network effects and disrupt middlemen and do it in a way that is reasonable and achievable in the short term.
One more? Okay.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Been a pleasure. Bye.